Welcome to New York City. Do you get up to New York very much these days?
Not as
too
much as I used to.
Yeah, you're mostly in the Washington area, right?
Yeah. Well, Virginia, Northern Virginia,
Yeah,
where I
right,
live
right.
now.
There's a lot going on there.
Oh, yeah.
Norman Curlin's very active.
Yes,
so,
yeah. And he lives about 6, 7 blocks from where I
Oh,
live.
no kidding.
Yeah.
Arlington, is it?
Yes,
Yeah.
and he had his 20th anniversary last Sunday.
Yeah, I couldn't able to get
was
there.
not up to it. I was going to go, but I just didn't feel good that day.
He's
I
a-
exercised too much the day before.
He's a bantam rooster, man.
Oh,
He's really
his
a-
daughter is great, too. 'cause
Yeah,
she's
D-
coming
Dawn,
on.
yeah.
So you're going to have a second generation.
Yeah, I know. Thank goodness for the second upcoming generation,
Yes.
and thanks for this generation, and welcome to Conversations. Pleasure, welcome to the program, a friend of Conversations. We did a program, I guess, back in the early 70s.
In
It would have been.
1974, 75.
Yeah, it would have been.
And we're talking about 29 years.
I
and
know.
of course, you haven't aged a day.
Not a day.
My hair has turned a little white.
Well, at least you've got some to turn white, you lucky fellow. But anyway, let me introduce you. And it's a senator. We call him Senator. He's Mike Gravel. And he was a senator from Alaska, served very well that state from 1969 until 1981. And he still kept his hand in. He's got a thing going now that he's involved with called the National Initiative. And there's so much to talk about. But Mike Gravel, welcome really very, very much. It's so good to see you again.
And thank you for having me and giving me the chance to expose the cause.
Yeah, it is a good cause in that, because I remember we did a program way back then with, it was with Louis Kelso, and you were senator, and you were looking, if you set me straight, but you were looking to have the Alaskan pipeline financed in such a way that went along with Lewis's
Not
ideas.
entirely.
And maybe you could share that. Yeah.
The pipeline was built, and BP owned a sixth of it.
Uh-huh.
And I had talked them into possibly selling a sixth, their interest. And Louis Kelso, and he was my mentor economically.
Yeah,
He was just fantastic.
He's really outside the,
And
on
well,
the
the
envelope.
ESOPs that we
Yeah.
have today are a product of Louis talking Russell Long and myself into doing the legislation
I remember.
in that regard. But what it was we were setting up a GSOC, a General Stock Ownership Corporation, where the people of Alaska, through this corporation, would buy a sixth of the pipeline and would finance it 100%.
Yeah, and they would finance it out of its future earnings.
Totally.
Yeah.
In fact,
now that's a really revolutionary idea.
well, but that's the whole
in and of itself.
But that's the whole Kelso concept that you use credit to acquire wealth, and that's exactly the way the rich people
That's what
do
the
it.
rich people have been doing since
It's called
Cro-Magnon days. I
Other
think.
people's money. is
Yeah,
what-
right. No, no.
and it worked out fine. It would have meant that the citizen of Alaska, even at the beginning, each one would have got about $500 a year, and it probably would have ratcheted up to a higher amount.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, sure.
And
It
about
does
5
good-
years, it failed because the governor at the time opposed it, and I had lost in the primary, and this was on the ballot in the general, and so I had no more money to put to it. I had deflected about a quarter of my campaign monies to try and get the people to vote for this.
For that issue. Was it a referendum or an
It was a
initiative?
referendum. It was. I
Yeah.
put it as an initiative because I couldn't get the federal government or the state government to do it, and so I put it in as an initiative.
Yeah, and you were one of those who picked up a Proxmire had, I think, and Senator Long really picked up on that
Long,
idea.
Long
he
was the prime mover,
Yeah.
and then I got on the finance committee with Long.
Oh, you were on finance with him,
And
yeah.
that's where we worked as a Mutt and Jeff team. He was the nice guy, and I was the tough guy.
Tough cop.
And we just would hammer this stuff in.
Yeah, he had that Eureka meeting with Lewis in '74, and they went and he came into the Senate. At least Norman and other people. Well, I knew Lewis. I've done a number of programs, but he came into the Senate, and he was a very powerful man. He ran that Senate Finance Committee chairman. He really did, and reached down in those populist roots that his daddy had down in Louisiana. He came in and said, "I'm a Kelsonian. I'm not a Keynesian." Mr. Nixon, remember Nixon in '72 said we're all Keynesians? He said, "I'm a Kelsonian." So he had a really revolutionary thing, and boy, the economists targeted him, I think, don't you think? You know, the academic economists.
How I came onto the scene was Russell contacted me, and I was just a freshman on the committee. And he said, "Mike," he says, "would you see a friend of mine?" Well, of course, the chairman of the committee is asking a junior member, "Would you see a friend?"
Where do you want me to go?
Where? What time?
What time? Yeah.
And then Lewis came into my office, and he came in about, it was a little after lunch. He stayed till the evening.
Really?
Oh, I just could not let him go.
Yeah.
Because what had happened was, my education was in economics,
It was
modest,
yeah.
but he had thought it all out.
Yeah.
And so why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah.
And so I, ever since, have been a very strong advocate of Lewis, and we became very close friends.
Yeah, Lewis.
And of course, he's since deceased now.
Yeah.
But someday, someday, his stuff will break through, and when it
I
does,
think so, yeah.
when it does, he'll be recognized for what he brought to the community.
Yeah, I think his is the only analysis, because I've done a lot of programs about economics, Mr. Heilbronner and all these people, and Mundell, who did the supply side, and all, and a lot of Keynesian people and that sort of thing, Mr. Galbraith, I think. But his, it seems to me, his, at a theoretical basis, his is the only system of analysis that stands outside of what all the others are included in, this labor theory of value, the idea that we're going to distribute income according to labor's participation in production, and that's becoming undercut by a trend of technological instruments and capital instruments being responsible for production through time, and the capital instruments are all owned by a small plutocratic class.
That's right.
We have a plutocracy, an economic plutocracy.
And the only way to solve that is to broaden out the base of ownership, so that when you lose your job, you have income coming in from your capital, and you're not totally dependent upon either the government for welfareism or nothing.
Yeah. Well, it was, you know, because there was a critique to capitalism, and that was by Mr. Marx. You know, Karl Marx had this critique of capitalism. He said, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. You could distribute according to need. But it seemed to be that many of the, in the Soviet Union, when the whole political process and economic process became all in one nomenclature and so forth, it was all in one group, the needs were not really, it wasn't able to work in terms of...
how serendipitous.
And so the question is, does it matter that the people are related to the way things are actually being produced? And this, we have a tremendous commitment to this idea through the Puritan ethic and other things, the idea that you work hard and you're going to have a work, and they say that you will get income by your participation in production through your labor, either intellectual or physical. It's not going to work because the cybernetics and so forth are not coming and displacing labor, and maybe it will. Lewis is the only one that agreed you could. If you could displace labor, you will. Let's make those machines pick the cotton so you don't have the slaves to do it. That kind of analogy. And that's a very large paradigm of thinking that runs counter to the institutional assumptions under which our society is organized, don't you think?
Very much so. In fact, the young man who accompanied me here, Jack Cross,
he's a great guy.
Ross has just written a paper that he insisted I read before coming on that addresses this whole historic evolving. But we both agree that this won't come about, and I'm convinced of this. Kelsoism will not come about until we have direct democracy, where the people make the decision as to how their economy is going to work, as opposed to the elites making that decision, who make the decision for their own personal interest.
I think so, yeah. And that's the way it's been, isn't it? It's been throughout all of
And you won't be able to break this chokehold that's on a society until you can empower the people. And I'm not talking about empower the people by just telling them, well, go vote for Charlie or vote for George or what have you. That's a disempowerment process.
You think so?
Well, on election day, you're giving your power away.
Yeah.
Well, what's the word, what's the terminology for giving your power away? It's disempowerment.
Yeah.
Now, what we're suggesting is that you can bring the people into the operation of government as lawmakers. Now stop and think. There's only three areas of government: the executive, the legislative, judiciary. You can't bring the people into the judiciary except for the jury system, or the executive unless you're appointed. But you can bring the people into lawmaking so that they make laws. And what we're suggesting is that this can be done where the people come in as lawmakers working in partnership with their existing elected representatives.
Like a participatory democracy.
Exactly.
Yeah, rather than a representative democracy.
And that's all we have in the world is a representative democracy.
That's true.
Except for one country, Switzerland. And when you start...
Well, I would make a case for, at least they're trying, if I may, in the country, odd as it may sound, the country of Libya. Is directly have people's congresses, and they directly run counter to that labor theory of value.
I don't have enough knowledge about that, but
well,
I do know about Switzerland. And in Switzerland, if you and I are Swiss citizens, we can initiate a law. We don't have to go to a town meeting.
Okay. Oh, you're talking political now. Yeah,
we can initiate a law. We don't have to get anybody's meeting. We can initiate a law get it processed, have hearings, have deliberations, get an advisory vote. If it's a national law, get an advisory vote by the Congress, and then we vote on it. And we don't have to go out on a rainy Tuesday night.
Yeah.
We can vote on it once a week over a 7-day period, 24 hours a day. And you can vote on it from any place in the United States or the world, for that
That's right,
matter.
like an initiative.
Well, we are initiating. See,
Yeah,
that's where
right.
the
Or the
terminology
citizens
comes
could
from.
initiate. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Right.
They can initiate legislation. And that, of course, so stop and think of the various issues
Yeah.
that are obvious, that there's something really, really wrong. Let's take gun control, for instance, okay?
All right, yeah.
Now, gun control, if you took a poll in the United States, I would venture to say more than 80% of the people think that we should register guns. And in large urban areas like New York, we should outlaw guns.
You have a very big lobbying group in the National Rifle Association.
No, it's not a big lobbying group. It's a very succinct lobbying group.
Well,
They know
well-financed and
Oh, that's
powerful.
right, and that they can surgically go after people.
Yeah.
So so you're never going to see a change nationally because of the way that is working. That they can go buy enough legislators to stop.
Best
It's
Congress
easier-
money can buy.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's easier to stop legislation, and it's much more difficult to enact legislation. So
Yeah.
all they got to do is stop legislation,
Yeah.
and they're successful at doing that.
Yeah. K
So they're
Street, yeah.
they're thwarting the will of the American people on something very important.
Now they had that built into the Founding Fathers had that sort of a notion built into it. I don't think they were anxious in having the untrampled masses making decisions because they weren't informed. They're not informed. They just don't understand the way we do, who are well informed here in this Senate or in this House of Representatives. We've been elected and selected and that sort of thing.
They were as informed as they could be at that point in time in human history, except that, keep in mind, John Adams, he was very knowledgeable about the town meeting and knew that the town meetings were much more successful than any other form of government in the colonies.
Right.
So why would he not be for that? John Adams was opposed to Tom Paine. Tom Paine's the guy that had it right, and is the one that
Common sense,
energized the people for the revolution.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, the revolution was fought not over, it was fought over home rule, not who would rule at home. That's what the revolution was.
That's interesting.
And
yeah.
they made a calculated decision to make sure that the people could not participate after the Constitution was ratified, so the people could no longer participate directly in their government. And that's what we have today. Stop and think, in the 220 some odd years that we've been in existence, what have we accomplished in fundamental changes through changing the Constitution? Only one thing. The rest is just boilerplate. We've only accomplished expanding the franchise, permitting people to vote,
allowed women to vote
with the
finally.
civil rights,
with
the Civil War, civil rights, and the rights of women to vote.
Yeah.
And what's the situation? More than 70% of the American people choose not to vote.
Yeah, and it's growing. I
Big
think.
accomplishment.
Yeah.
That's all we've done
Yeah.
in our 200-year history, and so that's where we need to make a fundamental change. And the change is not going to come from it's not going to come from the Congress. It's going to have to come from the people, and that's where we've designed the National Initiative for Democracy. And this National Initiative is a legislative package. It's made up of a constitutional amendment, which we call the Constitutional Amendment, and then it's made up of a statute, which essentially is a set of rules. Now, one of the things, as you well know, 24 states have the initiative.
I wasn't that aware.
California,
is
Washington,
big,
you name it. 24 states have it. The problem is that these initiatives are all controlled by representative government. And so it's not doing the best job possible, and none of them
Aren't they based on petitioning, though? You have to have
well,
a
but
certain
that's to
percent-
qualify.
Okay, yeah.
We have that too,
Yeah.
but I'll go into that.
Yeah, all right.
But sure, you go get petitions, the theory being that you have to have enough people interested in a legislative matter in order to put it before the people.
Makes sense.
Well,
It is
except that when you go ask people to sign a petition and you say, oh, you don't have to worry, this is to permit it to get on the ballot.
Yeah.
Well, they don't focus on the issue and they sign the petitions. So it's not the best way.
Okay.
In my mind, the best way would be to take a poll.
Yeah.
Because a poll can be a lot more accurate than a petition. And you could take a national poll for $30,000. So that's all it would cost to qualify an initiative. If you and I wanted to do an initiative nationally, we could do a poll, and that's the last penny we'd have to spend, because the rest of it, the communications, the process, and so forth, all of that is done with public monies. And
under
the national initiative, that's exactly the way it would operate.
With public monies. It's
Public
coming
monies,
out of the,
and we have a feature that's very important,
Yeah.
and we correct this with the constitutional amendment, because this, mind you, we're doing two things.
You're proposing a constitutional
Amendment and a federal statute.
Okay.
And we called the package the National Initiative.
All right, yeah.
And the constitutional amendment merely says that we assert our powers to legislate, which we've never lost.
The people. You're
The
speaking
people.
for
I'm always
the
talking
people.
to people.
Right.
I'm not talking about representative government.
I know it's hard. It's a little confusing. Right?
It's
now
real simple.
that's going to be a parallel institution that'll stay, and you'll work in parallel with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I hope it will go across the country and across the world, because what we're doing is we're changing the paradigm of human governance. Imagine, we're bringing the people in to govern themselves.
The people.
The people.
That's an interesting concept.
Right.
The people instead of
And
the
so-
special interest.
Now,
Yeah.
Harold, you'll never see this enacted by the Congress, not in your lifetime or in 20 lifetimes. What we have to do is enact it ourselves. So what we're doing is we're saying that we have a nonprofit corporation that's sponsoring the national initiative.
All right.
That is the Democracy Foundation.
All right.
Then we have a nonprofit corporation that's conducting the election. It's called Philadelphia 2.
Philadelphia
2 being one, the ratification.
Right.
Philadelphia 2 is called, and you could go to my website, our website.
Yeah. We're going to put that up. What
That's
is it?
right. NI4D.us, which stands for the National Initiative for Democracy.
For Democracy.
And 4 is the number 4.
Uh-huh.
You go to that website and you can vote. You register and you vote.
There are initiatives that are there found on the website.
Just only one initiative, the national initiative.
Oh, that is to set up a pattern where there could. Okay, yeah.
Keep in mind,
Yeah.
we are not getting involved in issues. What we're saying is, I want to empower you to work to vote on the issues. So this is the mother of reform. In other words, until this is put in place, you will not see reform in this country.
Until the people have a say in this,
And
along the lines
until they can make a decision.
Yeah,
Not a say. They have a say now. They
Yeah.
take polls, and that doesn't work.
Yeah, Gallup polls and
Well,
things. and
the
then-
politicians use that so
Yeah.
that they can run to the head of the crowd.
Yeah, right.
A poll is not a very good way to legislate. Because, here, I put a microphone in front of you. Harold, how do you feel about abortion?
Yeah, right.
Well, I don't know. I haven't thought of it very much, but I'm either for or
Well,
against.
that's one of the things I was going to say. A lot of the
But
people,
that's ridiculous.
some people argue that the whole business of governing and so forth. I remember Lewis, as a matter of fact, trying to. Do you ever try and understand the federal tax code? It's unfathomable.
It's that
It's
high.
that high. You
It's
can't
that
do it.
high.
And they've got people who are experts or something. We're the experts, and we can understand the nuances of the issues and the so forth like that. And the people can't understand. It's too complex.
They're only experts
and
for
they
part
don't,
of it.
or they also, they would say, the people don't care. The people have a life. They don't care. They just want the system to go, and they don't want to
Well,
participate.
the reason why they
Particularly
don't,
a lot of
wait a
people,
second.
young
No,
people,
the reason why they
just
don't
don't care.
Wait a second. The reason why they don't care is because they don't think their vote means
well,
anything.
perhaps so, yeah.
Well, but they're right.
Yeah, right.
They're right.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
what would you say if you voted for something for since Harry Truman, if you wanted health care, national health care, and you voted for candidates since Harry Truman that kept promising it and never delivered?
That's
now, what
the
would
case.
You,
That's
now,
the
what
case.
would you say that is? According to Einstein, repeating over and over something
same
doesn't
as-
work is insanity.
Right.
So maybe the smart people are the people that don't vote and stay home, take care of their kids, worry about their jobs, and try to improve themselves as a family.
Is it something maybe because a lot of the things have to do with the technological development of a society and that sort of thing. When you get you get cotton picking machines, you don't have to have slaves pick the cotton. That makes a thing like that. You have that kind of a thing. Is it that we're getting to a point now where when we had our Constitution established, they had this agreement with the plantation owners who had slaves. It was a big issue we had to fight a civil war over finally and so forth in terms of the historical event. But we're getting a point now with the cybernetics, with the internet, and with the communications that it's possible for us to think about some way of organizing a society other than along these representative democracy patterns that we have out of history. And the technology is making possible something new that has not been possible out of history. because we don't have a history of only plutocratic elites running things all over the place. What makes it different now than what has been the case throughout history, or can you address some of those issues?
Yes.
Maybe I'm off base on some of
No,
those.
you're not. First off, technology makes this sound reasonable, that everybody can vote and participate.
Yeah.
Here, you've got California, which is a state of over 30 million people.
Huge. It's a
30
country,
million
yeah.
people.
Eighth largest economy or something?
and they use initiatives. They could do better.
Yeah.
But stop and think of the situation that Schwarzenegger has been pulling off.
Yeah.
Interesting. He says to the Democratic-controlled state legislature, he says, well, if they won't go along with my budget proposal, I'll go around them to the people. And he just did that with this financing of the $15 billion that was approved by the people. That's right. He went around. Stop and think, if you had a president who could sit there and say, okay, the Congress, led by the likes of a Tom DeLay, won't do anything worthwhile, I'll go around them. I'll go to the American people with health care. I'll go to the American people with regulating firearms. I'll go to the American people with you name the issue.
Well, presidents do that, don't they?
They do not.
Try to go over the head of the media, or some people see the media as intervening between the people and the...
Not at all, Harold.
Mr. Reagan tried to reach over the...
It doesn't work that way.
Okay, you've been on the spot.
I'll tell you, it doesn't work that way.
Okay.
What happens, they like to tell you that they're going to use the bully pulpit.
That's right, Mr.
I've never
Roosevelt.
seen the bully pulpit work. What works is the chairman of the committee on the issue involved is romanced by the White House, and that's how they get it passed.
And some of the lobbyists from K Street?
Not some, all of the lobbyists.
Yeah, right, and it's just legion now.
Stop and think. With corporations, not only run the government, they run our society, and they run our global society, and in the global society, it's anarchy. There's no control. So
I mean, the world, right.
You'll never be able to deal with the problems of human beings unless you bring them in as lawmakers, because they'll be able to deal with corporate personhood. You know, a corporation is considered a human being.
Yeah, I know, under the law. I've never quite understood the full I'm not a lawyer.
Well, but the implications of that is that only human beings can vote. Corporations can't vote, but they can use their money to affect votes. So they corrupt the whole process.
David Corton tells us corporations rule the world.
Who do you think pays for all these lobbyists? I don't know any lobbyist who's an entrepreneur paying his own salary up there. They're all paid by corporations.
Right.
And we focus on the money, the obscene money that George Bush is raising and the
couple
Kerry's
hundred
raising.
million now, isn't it?
But we're focusing on the wrong thing. We spend a lot more money on the lobbying after they're in office than what they do. And then you can get a situation like when you see Bush go off the deep end with what he's done in Iraq. But that plays right into the military-industrial complex. This is manna from heaven.
Well, the government is set up, and people will say democracy and for the people and that sort of thing, but really governments have been set up for the benefit of the rich and the powerful, haven't they?
That's
to
always
protect
been
themselves against the masses. So this idea about involving the masses is something that you co-opt them, or you put, things like that. But it's always there to protect the interests of the status quo people that have the power, isn't it? And aren't the powerful more advantageous in terms of the way things are organized? The laws are set up to protect them first and foremost, and have been.
No question, and always have been.
And
the tax
always
code
will
is that
be?
way. Well, no, it won't be.
But that's a radical change.
If we're successful with the national initiative, the people will begin to come in and make laws, and then the people will make laws that focus on their public interest. This is not rocket science. I maintain that
it's radical.
Well, it's radical.
Here,
it's the American people, can make 100% of the policy decisions that affect their lives.
That's a radical notion from what there is
now. But think about it. Here, I had Edward Teller, when I was a freshman senator, come in and was trying to sell me on the ABM.
Hydrogen bomb? No, ABM, right.
And
Star
so
Wars.
he's sitting there. It was almost like a Strangelovian deal. He had cowboy boots on. He had his pants stuck in his cowboy boots, and he kept pulling on his pants. And all I could think of was the Strangelove. But all I could think of is, hey, I took maybe Physics 101 in college.
Right.
There's no way I was a match for him on physics.
No.
And that was not the issue. The issue was whether or not we would use the bomb as a matter of national policy.
Yeah.
I'm as qualified as he is because my life is at stake and his life is at stake.
Yeah.
And Americans will come to realize that whether it's health care or the other issues, education, welfare, job opportunities, employment, all of these issues that affect them and affect their lives. I mean, life and death issues that unless they have the power to make laws, they'll never have the final say, and they'll always be behind the curve because the elites will take care of themselves first.
Yeah, and the law would protect the elites in that position.
Of course.
Aristotle, Lewis used to talk about Aristotle. He would say that, you know, democracy in Greece, and a lot of these neocons try to go back to the Neoplatonists and stuff, and, you know, Athens as a model. And so, but he said, Athens was a slave society. I mean, it was a few people who lived the life of the mind and the spirit, a few people, but it was based upon slavery. All the societies have been based upon slavery. In a certain sense, if you start thinking of wage slavery and so forth, even it still is. We're in a situation of.
But it's diminishing.
But he said, and Aristotle said it was necessary that some could lead the life of the mind and the spirit, and it would always be necessary until and unless the loom learned to weave, is the way he put it.
And,
that
and,
the
and
technology.
the loom has learned to weave.
It is.
Yes. He was great to a point, Aristotle.
Well, yeah.
But right now we're moving into cybernative society. We're decreasing the job base, and we're increasing the production.
But we're all.
And as a result of that, we're either got a job or no job, and no job, we got no opportunity.
Money. You got no.
Unless you're wealthy.
Unless you've got.
Unless you own the machines.
Right, and that's very narrowly held and getting narrower.
Of course. And
no, of course.
But let's
that's
look to the solution to solve that problem, and that is the national initiative. Let me focus on one part of the national initiative. I think it's very significant. And people say, well, hey, this is a great idea. You know, I'm for this. Well, how's it going to happen? And I just said repeatedly that it won't be enacted by the Congress.
Yeah.
Well, how's it going to happen? Well, now keep in mind that it's taken us 12 years to get to the concept the way we have it now on the website, where people can vote, where they can go read the text of the law line by line, the procedures, which are the copy of what I've learned in the Congress. And the way we would enact it is, as you know, the amendment to the Constitution is done by Article 5. Now, Article 5 is a very undemocratic piece. Well, the Constitution is very undemocratic if you come to it.
Yeah.
But it's very undemocratic because you can, if you get 2/3 of the Congress to make an amendment that then goes to 3/4 of the state legislatures.
Yeah, right, for
but
ratification.
not the state legislatures. All you got to do is stop one house in the state legislature. So it's 13 houses of the 13 state legislatures that can stop any amendment.
Yeah, that was relevant at the very beginning.
So that means
I
that
think,
you're not going to get any reform.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why we have no reform.
Well, they built those. Did they build that in with the idea that they wanted to make sure they couldn't have reform?
Wait a second. They built that in so they could save slavery.
Yeah, that was the big issue.
I've got an article on our website, and it says the barriers to change. And there's 4 major barriers. And the reason why they're there is to protect slavery. And now that slavery has gone by the boards, we still have those 4 areas in the Constitution. But let me now come back to how the people can do this. The
people.
The people can do it.
The people, you know, the people.
The people
Yes.
can vote the national initiative and the amendment into law. And here's how you do it. You don't look to Article 5 because that's how the government amends the Constitution.
Right.
Let's look
Very
how
involved.
the people could amend the Constitution.
How could the
Now,
people?
our founding fathers purposefully did not put forth any procedures like they do in Article 5 for the government. They did not put forth procedures. But they did put forth Article 7, which is how the Constitution was ratified. And it said that when the conventions of 9 states have ratified this Constitution, it becomes the law of those 9 states, superseding the existing constitutions of those 9 states. So now we take...
Was that in the period of the Articles of Confederation? Or
No,
that was after that. We had that experiment.
That's in the Constitution, Article 7, very short article, easy to read.
Okay.
Now what we're saying is,
yeah,
we're stepping forward and saying, if that's how the government and the Constitution is created, then obviously, since we the people are the creators, then we cannot be bound by the createes. Makes no sense. God cannot be bound by his creation. So if we are, if we are the creator of the government,
The people.
the people,
Yeah.
then we cannot be bound by the government if we choose to change the government. Of course, you've got statements by Washington, Jefferson. They all have articulated statements. They never did anything about it, but they all bought into this. So now we look at this and say, if that's the case, then let's use Article 7 as a precedent and say that, but the standard of 9 states is irrelevant today. But we can do a better standard. Let's say in all elections now in the United States are the majority of the people who turn up to vote. That's how you elect people. Okay?
Yeah.
So let's say now, as a logical process, following the tradition of our more than 200 years, let's now say that if the majority of the people who voted in the last presidential election voted for the national initiative, then it would be the law of the land.
The people who
Stop and think.
That's all right. Yeah.
Yeah, we're using the precedent.
Right.
We're using two precedents.
Yeah.
We're using the fact that the people created the government in Article 7, okay? And we're using the precedent of how we've conducted elections ever since our founding. And that is that the majority of the people who show up are the ones who elect the person, whether it's the president or members of Congress or the city council, you name it. So now, what is that number? It's an interesting number.
Yeah.
You look at the last election when in
What
02,
Yeah.
okay,
No,
I mean
in
2000,
yeah.
it means it's over 50 million Americans, voters, registered voters, have to vote for the national initiative. They say, well, that's horrendous. That's right, it is. It's unbelievable as a task. It'll cost as much as a presidential campaign. But there's no easy way to do this. There's going to be no fix in to empower the people. You have to overcome the elites, you have to overcome the establishment, you have to overcome the unbelievable ignorance that exists in academia about this subject. This one professor, Richard Parker of Harvard, who's a great supporter of ours, he articulated this beautiful statement, there is no authority superior to the people. Let me say that again. There is no exterior authority to the people. So we are the authority. All we need is a process that makes sense for the people to act in a majoritarian fashion to approve the national initiative. And once that's in place, they now have procedures to amend the Constitution. They have procedures to make laws. And they will work in partnership with their representative government. And if the representative government doesn't cooperate in this new partnership, they have the power to correct the representative government.
They have the power to correct it in what way? I mean,
Well, they could outlaw the Senate. They could outlaw the Supreme Court.
I'm really trying to understand, but this thing you're doing, this national initiative thing, it's parallel to the existing system, and it's one that involves, I can see, outreach, communication,
it sets up.
It sets up a
It
tablet.
sets up a, quote, let's call it, it sets up a legislature of the people. That's what it sets up. And it not
a virtual legislature? I mean,
virtual.
Virtual
with
legislature.
procedures,
Yeah.
hearings.
Is this something Dick Morris is interested in?
Not that I know of.
I thought I heard him say that.
No.
Well, never mind. Anyway, go on, yeah.
Well, and it's independent. It's made independent of representative government by the creation of an electoral trust. And so this electoral trust will just supervise the policy and make sure the electoral trust does not get involved in the issues of an initiative, but then accommodates and administers the procedures for the people to function. Now we're talking about a initiative process at every jurisdiction of government. In every jurisdiction, at the city council level, the county level, using all the same procedures, using the same electoral base, because the first thing the electoral trust is charged with is to go out and register all qualified Americans for life. None of this stuff of playing games in every state. And every initiative election, you and I here in New York want to have an initiative election?
Oh, you and I, a citizen A, citizen B, and want to have
an election.
An election on what?
Let's say school prayer. Let's get a controversial issue.
Yeah,
you and I want to have school prayer,
or
the Ten Commandments put up in every federal building in the United States.
Yeah, we want to do that. Yeah.
We want to do that.
We want to have it put up. Then is that it?
Of course, we're advocates.
Okay, yeah.
So we now turn around and we call up the electoral trust and say, this is what we want to do, and they will do like they do in Congress. they will assign some attorney, a staff attorney, who will help us draft this legislation. You're not an attorney, I'm not an attorney.
No.
So why should we pay for an attorney? So we get the drafting done to make sure that it's reasonably constitutional.
Reasonably constitutional in language that can be understood and is legal.
Well, wait a second.
And
No, stop and think. What's
reflects
legal?
what we're wanting. Yeah.
Harold, what's legal, when you amend the Constitution, that's it. There's nothing else beyond that. So the Supreme Court doesn't come in and declare an amendment to the Constitution unconstitutional. All they can do is interpret it. They can declare laws unconstitutional, but they can't touch the Constitution. And just as a sidebar, one of the things we have in our amendment to the Constitution is the outlawing of all monies in the initiative process that do not come from a natural human being, which means
Your corporations, huh?
that's right. We
Yeah.
just put the nail in the coffin to corporate
Now
personhood.
you're coming up against the vested interests that run the society now.
Of course.
Yeah, and you're coming up against that.
Oh yeah,
right?
no, and we feel it. We've been blacked out of the media. I got
Yeah.
on C-SPAN once by accident, and then we took a spike. And we
Yeah.
only have 930 some odd votes,
Okay.
so we're not a threat to anybody.
Yet.
But there's an opportunity. It just happened
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago for
Yeah.
me. Showtime is putting on a program electing a president.
Yeah.
It's a reality
It's
show.
a reality show
that's
in the
going
politics.
to parallel
Yeah.
the election from August to November.
Really?
And
Okay.
it's
yeah.
10 episodes, and they're going to pick and select 12 candidates that are going to vie for the presidency. So they're going to debate, and they're going to be winnowed down
Yeah.
over these 10 presentations.
Uh-huh.
Well, as soon as I found out about this, it just dawned on me. This is
This
an
is a natural
opportunity.
for the initiative.
Oh,
huh?
this is
Yeah.
an opportunity to tell the people that, hey, talk about all these issues you want. You're not going to see them solved.
Yeah.
But you'll see them solved if we can empower you as a citizen to vote for the law or vote against the law.
Does this have anything to do like what Mr. Perot used to talk about now?
No,
Or when
he-
he was off the track, he had the people, and we had this notion of what do they call it, town hall meetings and this kind of thing? I don't mean to throw a curveball. Or
It's not a curveball.
Yeah.
He had a...
There were a lot of people support. He got 20% of
Yeah,
the vote.
and they all misunderstood what he was saying.
Well, all right, but
he
there
was
were
saying-
there's a constituency out there for thinking about something new and different in terms of the way things
But they
are done.
misunderstand how it operates.
All right.
And how his town hall meeting would do, it'd be like a glorified poll. After the town hall decided, then it would go to the powers that be to decide whether or not they want to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, right.
That's
Well,
just another shell game.
that's working
No,
within the
we're
system,
not.
yeah.
We're not touching
Yeah.
any of that.
Uh-huh.
What we're saying, and I know of no plan in world history or U.S. history that addresses the problem the way we have, where it says that you, the people, can be a lawmaker operating as a group independent of representative government.
Okay, now let's trace this thing again, our initiative about, what was it we were going to do? Put
Okay,
the First
now,
Amendment.
first-
No, the first, the
we're-
10 Commandments on every
We're gonna
building.
put okay.
And,
so you and I, we get it drafted.
Yeah.
So we now have to go get it qualified. So we can go get petitions, and there's percentages, or we can take a poll. We can take a poll, and probably there's enough people out there that want to have this happen. And so we're qualified. The next thing that would
are
happen.
there standards that have to be met, certain
yeah,
amount of
yeah,
petition
yes,
signings
yes.
or something in order for it
That's
to be
right,
viable?
and it's all in the law.
Y-
And it will be
yeah.
established by the Electoral Trust, okay?
By the electoral.
All the
Right.
24 states.
People
have-
are going to be able to go to your site to get the details of it, because there's an awful lot you're throwing out. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you go to the site, and you can read the amendment, you can read the law, and you can also read the parish report, which is a detailed analysis of each one of the sections of the law. And I got to tell you, an ordinary person can, if he'll spend the time to read this, he'll be awestruck. The procedures that we're using in this are no different than the procedures we use in the Congress.
Okay.
They're no different.
Yeah, and you
we're not,
hadn't-
we're
yeah.
not reinventing anything. We're taking the procedures that representative government use, we're putting them into a law so that people can use them.
Now, you're putting it into a law, but it's a little confusing because you're outside. It's virtual. I heard you say this is a virtual thing. It's a thing. You and I are presenting this thing.
Oh,
It's
no.
not within any of the congressional organizations and
That's
so forth.
right. They got nothing to say
It's
about it.
existing in virtual reality, or
Of
it's
course
a
it
virtual.
is. It's-
yeah,
it's
internet-based and that
Well,
kind of
but
thing, and dependent upon that.
Internet,
or?
no.
It's not. Okay,
Harold,
help me out.
Right
yeah.
now, it's internet-based.
Yeah, right.
but it
Well,
doesn't
why
have
not?
to
It's
be.
a great
If we
communication.
had the money, you could vote through the telephone. You could vote at a kiosk.
But
If
what
it-
happens with this thing about the 10 Commandments? What happens?
Okay,
with that
first
thing?
thing that happens is
It has to meet a certain
stop, we
level
qual-
of support in the
That's
general
right.
society
To get
through a
it
petition.
qualified. To get
Yeah.
it qualified.
Qualified to what?
so that the electoral trust can begin its processing.
Processing this
Yeah.
amendment or
Yeah.
this idea.
So that you get a concept.
Yeah.
When I was a senator,
Yeah.
I could introduce a piece of legislation.
Yeah.
The fact that I was a senator qualified me to do what I wanted to do.
That's right. You were.
Okay,
you
but
were-
all I did was introduce it.
Mhm,
Didn't mean I passed it.
yeah.
So now we're saying that you can qualify an initiative via by petition, or you can qualify it by a poll, or you can qualify it by the legislative body of the jurisdiction in question, putting it on the ballot without change.
Yeah, okay, and then so that idea that we had about the Ten Commandments going up in every building, and so
Okay,
on,
now
there
it's
could be
qualified.
there could be things being advanced by citizens that are absurd or something. You know, they could be
Of course.
all cheese should be green or
You-
something.
that's
and you know,
right. And
and
you'll
then
see-
so you have a thing where to eliminate that kind of, because that's what a lot of the cognoscenti seem to think is the people are an ass, or the people do not know anything. I mean, the people, who cares what the people think? We know what's right because we're educated, we've been to Harvard and that sort of thing.
I got to tell
you.
You
understand?
That's
you understand?
ridiculous. Stop
Yeah.
and think.
No,
what would
but you understand that's
Oh,
part
do
of
I
the
understand
thinking.
that?
Yeah, all right.
I hear that the last 10 years that's nothing but I hear.
Yeah,
It-
yeah, I
it's the
suppose you
educated
would.
people that have problems with this.
Uh-huh.
The ordinary citizen understands this real well because they know they're getting screwed.
Yeah, and that's why they're not even participating.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
increasingly around the world, I think too.
No question.
Yeah, and maybe the world also just yeah,
But
the
stop and
world
think-
public opinion is really against a lot of the systems that are in place and what is being done in their name now. Particularly as we get to a point
The
where they got
wars.
atomic wars that could destroy the whole species.
Harold,
We
do
got
you-
a
do you-
saying.
do you
We
remember-
should have a saying in these
Yeah,
things.
we do have a saying. It's a saying by Dwight Eisenhower after he left the office.
Military
He
industrial.
said, someday
Uh-huh.
the people are going to want peace so bad,
Yeah.
they're going to push the government aside and take it.
It's too important to be left to the generals.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the politicians.
Mhm, and the
we're
politicians.
seeing that right
Yeah.
now with the debacle going in Iraq. But
Seems
now
to be
let's proceed
an
on our
opportune
process.
time now. Yeah.
Well, let's proceed on. Now we're qualified.
Yeah.
So the electoral trust
This
is going to
thing
appoint.
about the Ten Commandments.
That's right. So they're going to appoint a hearing officer.
All right.
Okay. And the hearing officer, like a workman compensation hearing officer, is a professional.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have a hearing. Now the hearing can use modern technology.
Yeah.
So we may want to do it on TV, interactive TV, however they do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you and I will be on one side of the table, and members from the Congress will be on our side of the table
You mean
also.
the elected Congress?
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. They want to hear the facts.
Uh-huh. Well, why are they going to be there now? They would have written to, why are they going
If
to...
you'll follow along.
Yeah,
let me-
okay, I'm
let-
sorry, yeah.
Okay. So now we
They'd
have
have
a
to
hearing.
reach a certain standard, like the Supreme Court only hears certain
Forget
cases.
the Supreme Court
All
right now.
okay, sorry.
We now bring the people come in. We have a testimony.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have what the Congress has is we have a hearing record.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the hearing, the electoral trust convenes a deliberative body. That's like a committee in the Congress, and the committee goes over this deliberative body goes over the hearing record. They can bring in experts. They can bring you and I in and talk to us about what they want, and then they can even amend what we're proposing.
They can amend it.
Yes.
They don't have to pass it with us.
No,
Are we
no,
the
no,
ones
they
who
can-
initiated it, and they're going to amend our thing out of existence to where
There's a process and there's
Yeah.
reasons for this.
I'm raising questions of
because
my ignorance.
you and I could object to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
They could amend it.
Yeah,
But
they
you and I could-
amend our amendment.
That's
They
right.
amend
We could
our
object.
amendment.
We
yeah.
could object to it.
Yeah.
But stop and think.
Mm.
When we now go to final vote,
Yeah.
and the electoral trust publishes the record of the deliberative committee, which says this and this and this, it'll destroy our chances of getting any votes. So we're going to be smart, and we're going to go along with the amendments. Okay, that's the clever thing to do.
Well,
Trust me.
that sounds like we're in the Congress of the United States.
No,
no,
you're
we're
not. No, not yet. Not
no,
yet.
No.
Now the hearing record and the deliberation record does now go to the Congress, and they got 90 days to vote in an advisory capacity.
Isn't there some process where it could be just voted down and not be bothering congressmen
No,
with this?
we bother Congress.
No, but I mean,
With-
how do you get rid of the things that says all cheese has to be green?
No.
Those kind of absurd things that are going to come out of a mass.
Here, stop and think.
yeah.
We've got 24 states that have done this for 100 years, and there's never been this level of absurdity.
Yeah, okay.
We've
yeah.
passed over 1,000 initiatives in those
Initiatives and
24 states,
referendums, yeah.
and they've never bankrupted a state. They've never done anything very bad.
You've got faith in the people.
Well, this whole
You are really.
Harold, the premise
Yeah.
of all of this,
Uh-huh.
what I'm saying,
Yeah.
is unreserved faith in the people.
Yeah.
If you don't have that,
They've done better than the leaders.
well,
Yeah.
here, let me show you.
Yeah.
What would you have faith in? A decision made by the majority of 500 135 members of Congress who are affected by money on issues?
They're just
or would you have more faith
money-raising machine.
in the majority of 120 million people? Where do you think you're going to get the best decision?
I think it'd be the second.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Just do
Why
the
don't we
math.
have a procedure to
Just
do that?
do the
Why
math.
don't we set up a procedure so we can draw upon that larger one, that second one?
That's exactly
That's
what
what
we're
that sounds
doing.
like
That's
you're
what the
trying to
National
do.
Initiative is all about.
Listen, yeah, you got to share a little. Share it. Take that. It's really good, and we're going to put the information up, and people are going to have to go to your website. They're going to be in touch with you.
And
we
takes
don't want to
some
lose track
thinking
of
and
this
studying.
Showtime thing because that's something that may be coming
Oh,
up
yeah.
now. But I also, you were in the Congress. Where were you born? Just a couple of 5 seconds. Or
Springfield, Massachusetts.
Right.
My parents were
How did you get to
French Canadian immigrants.
Yeah. How did you
And,
get to be from Alaska in the
I
Senate?
drove a cab in New York City here.
You know
and-
New York.
Oh,
Welcome
yeah.
back to New York,
and
young man.
And last 2 years of college were at Columbia.
Yeah.
And I went to Alaska to be
What year?
to be president.
What year?
1956.
I went to Alaska in 1957. I was in Alaska in 1957.
Well, we were there at the
I went
same
there
time.
as a young man, and I went up there, and I got lost at the, where is it?
Wait, so my 5 seconds are running out
Sorry.
here.
Yeah, but I got lost on top of Mount McKinley. I went back, foolish. I went up and I went to a railroad to get off it there, and you go up and you get at Mount McKinley. And I got up, and it was beautiful weather. It was August month, and there were bears, and it was lovely. And I was reading Thoreau, and it was wonderful. And all of a sudden, the weather changed, and there were no trees, and I was there. And it must have been a 30-hour walk back I had. I was dumb. I could have died on that mountaintop.
I made the same
But it's
mistake.
beautiful
I
country.
made the same mistake.
You did?
Oh, yeah. I climbed a glacier.
I was reading Thoreau.
I climbed the glacier without equipment, and
Yeah.
6 months later, I had to have my knee operated on.
Really?
So
Yeah.
we're not all that smart
Yeah,
sometimes.
but it's really beautiful country.
Oh,
yeah,
there's
it's
no
gorgeous.
question.
Yeah,
No question.
And you did that.
Alaska has the initiative.
Yeah,
and-
they do. They
yeah.
do. Yeah.
It's one of the 24 states.
Uh-huh.
But here again, those initiatives are not the best initiatives.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
What we're talking about is setting up a procedure where the people operate independently.
Yeah, yeah.
And it will all depend on the people. If the people want to study it, learn about this,
Yeah.
we bring visibility, people get interested.
Uh-huh.
The people want to be empowered. The
Mhm.
polls show this overwhelmingly.
Mhm.
Problem is, they're not aware that there's a process that they can empower themselves.
Mhm.
And it's not for voting for George or John or Harry or you name it. It's
Uh-huh.
for voting for yourself.
Uh-huh.
Now, I don't denigrate representative government. It's
Well,
taken us
yeah,
thus
yeah.
far, but it's topped out. It's not doing the job,
Mhm.
and it never really did the job. Stop and
Mhm.
think of all the problems we've had in our history.
Well, we've had problems. We've had progress, too. Although James Joyce does have Daedalus say
progress
history.
all over the world.
Right. James Joyce had Daedalus say history is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken. Something is changing. A good deal of what's changing is the technological extension of our consciousness, and we're to a point where we can destroy the whole species now.
Right, but-
Something new is blowing in
But
the
now
wind.
maybe
Yeah.
we have to advance our political governance
Yeah.
system to the level we have in our scientific area.
Political and economics and economics.
Well, no,
The two are tied together.
economics
Yeah.
will come. They'll come. Believe me, once the people have the power, you watch economics
Yeah,
change.
but then a lot of people will say, well, the people will just vote, when they have access to the Treasury, they will just vote all kinds of things for themselves, and then that'll be the end of a responsible government. And so
Well,
that's what
I gotta
people-
tell you,
that's what conservatives will
That's
say.
right. And the
Yeah.
facts are just the opposite.
Really, they are.
We've got
yeah.
100 years of experience,
Mhm.
and the people have never voted to shower themselves with the Treasury.
Mhm.
Now, Orange County has, New York City has, all of the various governments that are and the federal government on the verge of bankruptcy today with the debt we have.
Yeah,
that-
right. Yeah,
that's
really
all
so-
representative
yeah.
government.
Yeah, it is.
The people,
yeah. You're
the
right.
people,
You're
they
right.
haven't done it in Switzerland.
Uh-huh.
They haven't done it in any of the states that have this power in the country.
Uh-huh.
So that's a canard
You think,
that the
yeah.
people who want to denigrate,
Mhm.
the elites who want to denigrate the power and the
Yeah.
wisdom of the people.
So if you're proposing this, in the end, you're going to have a situation that is going to be able to be based among the people and so forth. I tend to think economics, but but you're going to have a system that's going to be, in the end, it will be understood by and able to be gone along with the people who have had a stake in terms of the traditional patterns that this system would be, in a certain sense, altering a new paradigm. They'd be able to go along with it. So it's not a revolutionary off
And
with
the
their
par-
heads thing.
Well, no, quite
Yeah.
the contrary.
Yeah, okay.
The paradigm,
Yeah.
the people are more conservative than their leaders.
Mhm.
The growth of government
Mhm.
comes from people running for office, like myself, bribing their constituency to vote for them.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
they're bribing them with their money.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is.
It's a whole bribery system.
Yeah, it's just a great big...
And of course the lobbyists come in with a little more money.
Yeah, right.
So, but now what we're saying...
Best government money can buy, Greg
That's right.
Palast.
But stop and think. We have
Yeah.
got 100 years experience, and the experience demonstrates overwhelmingly that people are more conservative than their leaders. And you can ask why. It's their money.
Yeah,
That's
right.
why.
Yeah.
And so the fears that we have of the mob...
Yeah, well, there is a lot of fear of that. Yeah.
It wasn't
There's been a
valid.
fear.
It wasn't valid in 1790.
It was valid in 1789.
It wasn't.
In France.
It wasn't.
They cut off their heads. Remember
You
that
had a-
La
you had a
Miserable mob?
different-
You got a
that's right, you had a
reign of
different-
terror of
you
these
had a-
ignorant people and so forth. You know?
Harold,
Yeah.
you had a different situation
Yeah,
in France.
right. Okay.
I'm talking about the United States.
Okay, right.
Shays' rebellion
Yeah.
was the one that scared
The
people
bejesus,
into
yeah.
having the Constitutional Convention.
Yeah.
What was Shay doing? People ought to look at that. The people in western Massachusetts were being unfairly taxed, and most of the representation in the state legislature was from the Boston area.
Right.
Now,
Right.
Shay, Captain Shay, who was a captain in the Revolutionary War, said, well, we're fighting for exactly what we fought the Revolutionary War for. But he didn't understand that he wasn't party to the elites. And the elites had structured. Let me go back to the cliche I said.
Yeah.
That is, the Revolutionary War was fought over home rule so that we would have rule in this continent. It wasn't fought over who would rule at home because the people who were ruling at home continued to rule at home, except for those Tories that and loyalists that went up to Canada and went back to Britain.
Yeah, and it was about a third of them.
So
I think about a third were Tories.
So
yeah.
they set up a structure that they locked in themselves into power. Now, we get a lot of rhetoric about, you know, how wonderful they were and that they're all giants and they're all the greatest luminaries in society.
Well, it was a pretty good collection of, at the time. It was a big
They
movement.
were intelligent.
It was the Scotch Enlightenment, the Scottish Enlightenment.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I
but
think,
also
yeah.
keep in mind
Yeah.
that they were entrepreneurs, they were wealthy people,
Yeah.
and they were planters. And you know what it takes to do good work is to have economic freedom.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
if you give people economic freedom, you'll be surprised what they can do.
Yeah.
And all of those elites had this economic freedom.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
so
some of
now,
those elites in the South had economic freedom because they had a bunch of slaves to
of
pick
course,
all that cotton.
well, but wait a second,
and
not
they were
only-
invested
well, wait a
in
second,
that.
not only the South now,
Yeah.
you had slaves in the North. now.
Well, you could say right now, if we went back to Louis Kelso and his notion of the fact that, and we went through it pretty quick there at the beginning, that, you know, this labor theory of value that informs all economic theory, which in terms informs a political process in a very large sense. We're all Keynesians, we're all this. It really is, in a certain sense, if it's true that the labor input to production is becoming on a curve, it's almost hyperbolic, where what's really creating wealth increasingly are technological instruments and corporate assets or assets like that, and those are all held by a relatively small percentage of the population. Everybody's supposed to get a income for their life's purposes by having a labor relationship to production, and that's being undercut. We've got a real problem in that because the Marxists used to call it wage. We live in a slave system. And it's accepted
and Harold,
in a certain
it's
sense.
going-
It's called
gonna
wage
get-
slavery,
wait.
but it's a major change that's going to be coming because you could argue, you're going to say from the political process we'll get liberty. One could say from the economic process, if everyone had a stake in things, you had an economic system, that would lead to political consequences.
They're laced in
also.
together. They're not
They're
They're not
inseparable.
separable.
I think so, yeah.
They're not separable.
But
And
it's the
what you're
technological-
describing, technological advancement, is
what's gonna
going to
liberate
be
us.
the eclipse of the freedom that we enjoy.
Well, it's going to be that which could set us free, as
Well, wait a second.
Aristotle said.
It's not going to set us free.
It could.
Not unless you get the people to enact laws
And if you-
to give them the same rights as the elites.
And you have an economic system that's going to relate people to the way
but
things
that
are being
economic
produced.
system will come into being if the people bring it into
Well,
being.
all right, and if you had that economic system, it would be
Now
easier to
you'll
bring the
solve the
political
pro- now
thing
you'll
in.
solve the
Yeah, the
problem.
two go hand in hand, is
Well,
what I'm
no,
saying.
they go. But wait a second. No,
Which
one's
goes first? You think the first, the
You
political
empower the people
Wow.
to make laws.
and then they'll make the right laws.
Without the people making laws,
Mm-hmm.
nothing ever happens. It gets worse. The wealthy are going to move into their gated communities.
Well, that's what's going
and
on.
the rest of the people are going to be on welfare.
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, and even maybe if they are no longer needed as slaves to pick that cotton, and you're going to have cybernated software packages that can do away with accountants and all
Of
kinds
course,
of things by
of
which
course.
people get a sense of identity. and how they get, and more important, how they get income. And the assets are all owned by a small plutocratic class, and they get, I think it's 154 individuals. The net worth is equal to 50% of the world population or something. It gets more concentrated, and it serves only the top elite few. You're going to end up a situation where it's going to be guillotine time in terms of a massive uprising against an unworkable system, both politically and economically, because something has changed, and what's changed is the technology. That's what's been changing all along. The steam engine.
Unfortunately, you may have that physical revolution. You may not.
You may.
It certainly worked in getting rid of Milosevic. It certainly Shevardnadze got rid of him.
Since we bungled into Iraq and so forth, the famous New York Times said we have two superpowers. We got the United States of America with a military might in 130 countries, and you got world public opinion. And that world public opinion is seriously turning angry at the king, or the divine right of the king.
What can he do about
to do what it wants to do?
Harold, what can he do about
well, what you should do, you know what we should do? We should start a thing called we could call it like the National Initiative.
How
do you think?
What you could do about it is you could make people lawmakers.
Yeah, but that's going to.
But that's the power of government.
Have you got some people who are supporting you in this? I think it's a great idea.
Sure, I've got some.
Did I see Noam Chomsky sign on to it?
No,
is it all left-wingers?
Howard Zinn? No.
No, Howard Zinn.
My God, left-wingers.
Yeah,
our strongest supporters are the far right.
Really?
The American Free Press is the only journal that has written overwhelmingly about us.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
So some libertarians are signing on to it?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
This has got nothing to do with Democrat, liberal, Republican, the right, left. Got nothing to do with that.
Nothing?
Stop and think.
Yeah.
We're empowering the people. Whatever the people want to be, they can be.
Yeah, right.
But they'll have the power to make laws and control their own destiny and their own lives.
And set up economic systems.
Of course.
That could come from that.
That's the only way it'll come.
Do you feel you're sort of, in a certain sense, it's like a subversive kind of attitude toward that? Or
quite the contrary.
But you're going to be able to get...
It's the most enlightening, opening attitude to say that the people really can govern themselves. That's not subversive.
And you don't think it is, huh?
And of course, our founding fathers said it wasn't. Now, they didn't act on it, but when they say, we the people do ordain, well, I got to tell you, we're going to give them a surprise.
Let's take them up at their word,
We're going to let the people ordain.
We've run out of time. There's not enough time. We could have gone into a million different... They're going to have to go to the site. Mike,
well, they're also going to have to go to AmericanCandidate.com and vote to support me.
All right. It was Mike Gravel, the ex-senator from Alaska in 1969, 1981. He's got this national initiative, keeping the hand in, and it's really worth going to. Everyone's invited to go to the site, and again, you say it, we're going to have it up, but it's
NI4D, number 4D.US, which stands for the National Initiative for Democracy, and .US, I just like the...
You like the sound of that.
Rather than .com or org, I like .US.
Yeah, TV. See, we should do one TV, because we're in TV. We're in the media, and media is a place where these things can be discussed. Because it's sort of meta. You want something meta away from the established institutions themselves.
We are talking about meta government.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's what we're talking about.
And I hope you get that thing going with Showtime.
Oh,
because that would be a great opportunity.
I'd like to debate these other people,
right.
And who knows? We could. Well, the opportunity is to bring national attention on the solution for the people to govern themselves.
Absolutely.
Which is they're not being made aware of, obviously, because media does not want to make them aware of it.
I think there's a lot of people be interested in this. I think everyone should go to your site and look it up in good in depth, because you've really given a lot of thought to this. Really an interesting idea.
It's taken us 12 years to put on this site what you see. This didn't jump on the table.
It didn't just happen overnight.
This took trial and error, and I've been to the Supreme Court of the United States on this. They wouldn't grant certiorari. The issue is very simple. Who's the boss in our society? Is it the people?
Corporation.
Or no? The people or government officialdom. Corporations control government officialdom.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
they do it from behind.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, well, it's really interesting, and it's really going to speak to what concerns a lot of people. I think why a lot of people are upset with the political process.
It's the only chance we have. It's the only chance we have.
Okay, great.
And thank you for putting me on so that I could expose these ideas.
We're out, so that's the end. Okay, that's the end. We got the program, and we just checked. We're through, Mr. Lee, right? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So that.